Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day 510. 510. Day 510, man oh man. August the 2nd, 2018, Thursday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Alrighty. Well, probably the biggest story of the day today, there's really two. One that's kind of flying under the radar, which I'll talk about in a minute. But this, obviously the dominant story of the day had to be the hearings, the Paul Manafort hearings, and what went on there. Probably the best article I read on it, and I read half a dozen or so, was in the Washington Examiner. And quite a few other news sites have picked up things from that article. And so it's, you're seeing quite a bit from that article on various news sites and other reporters reading the Washington Examiner article and then writing about it themselves. But the Washington Examiner is the original source because it was their reporters who were actually in the courtroom watching this go on. So apparently, this is we had the preliminary type hearings, but this is actually day 2 of the hearings, actual hearings. And it looks like there's a couple specific things I'll tell you if you haven't heard. But just a general feeling from the reporters who were in the courtroom from the Washington Examiner are that Judge Ellis has got a very short fuse, particularly with the way this entire case was brought against Manafort, and he is not cutting any slack at all to Mueller's team. It appears to me, just from just where we are in the early stages of this trial, that Manafort's going to win this case. Now, keep in mind, there is another case which is in another jurisdiction, either Washington or New York one. But this particular case, it looks like Judge Ellis is not going to tolerate a bunch of nonsense. So there's a couple really cool things that came out here. So let's dig into this just for a second. So the Washington Times is basically saying that Uncle Bob the Executioner's lead attorney is testing Judge Ellis's patience in the courtroom today. One of the things he did was he says, well, Gates may or may not testify. May or may not testify. He's the star witness. He's the guy that apparently turned on Manafort and produced all the damaging evidence which was going to lead to the conviction. So here you have this lead attorney for Uncle Bob telling Judge Ellis, well, he may testify, he may not testify. And there was a reason for that. He was definitely meant to testify, and even Judge Ellis says, oh, he's going to testify. But because of the opening statement made by Manafort's attorneys, I think it's scared Uncle Bob's legal team because they know that Manafort's attorneys plan on playing hardball. They plan on playing hardball. And we got an indication of this yesterday when it was reported that it looked like Manafort was going to turn on Gates. And that's exactly what he's going to do. And now we know that for sure because of the opening statement by his attorney. So basically the opening statement by his attorney is that basically Manafort's attorney is saying that Gates is in fact a thief and a liar who embezzled millions from Manafort's company, then committed financial fraud to cover it up. So it appears that what Manafort's attorney is going to say is that all these transactions and things that Uncle Bob is saying were illegal were actually things that were done by Gates, hidden from Manafort. And then it was actually Gates. And that when the heat came down on Mueller, Gates knew that he was going to be implicated as well. And so when he felt the pressure getting too close, he went and turned to cover his butt to try to put it all on Manafort. So it looks like it's going to be where this case is going to come down, is going to be Manafort's attorneys are going to try to prove that it was Gates who actually did the criminal activity and tried to put it off on Manafort. And of course, Uncle Bob the Executioner is going to try to make the opposite case that no, actually Gates is the good guy. He didn't know about any of this, and that Manafort is the bad guy. So one of these two things are going to be unearthed in this court case, and we'll have to see which way it goes. But right now, it's pretty obvious that to the reporters from the Washington Examiner that it doesn't look good on the Uncle Bob the Executioner side, because just the way that they started their case, the way they started their case by bringing in people to testify about how rich Manafort is. They brought in a couple guys who he buys suits from. They brought in a couple guys who've done work on his homes. They brought in a couple other guys that have had financial issues or transactions with Manafort. This car dealer who sold his wife her Mercedes and this type of thing. So basically, the very opening part of the case against Manafort by Uncle Bob the Executioner was to spend the first part of their this is their opening. This is their lead, which is usually your strong point. They're leading by just bringing in a bunch of people to say Manafort's rich. At which point Ellis, after about 5 or 6 of these guys, Ellis shut it down, said, okay, that's it. We've had enough. If you're just going to bring in people to tell us that Manafort had a lot of money, spent a lot of money, and bought lavish gifts and lived a luxurious lifestyle, he said, well, there's a lot of people in this country that have a lifestyle like that and have a lot of money. That's not a crime to be rich. You better have something else. And by the way, no more of these witnesses. I think the jury's got the point. Mr. Manafort's got a lot of money. He likes nice things. Good. What's your next point? So Ellis is giving them a very, very short leash. And if you're leading with something like that and then telling the judge in the same breath that your star witness may not even testify, after Manafort's attorneys have given their opening statement and saying, yeah, well, here's what he did. He's actually the guilty one. He's the liar. He's the thief. He's the one that did all this, kept it from Manafort. In fact, he embezzled this money from Manafort. It was Manafort's company. Gates worked under him. So this is a case of this guy cheating his boss and his boss's company and then rolling over when he feels the heat. So this apparently is going to be the baseball game that we are looking at here. And it doesn't look good already for the Manafort side because there's no question that obviously Manafort's rich and he's got really good lawyers. There's no way that they would go into court in their opening statement and make these accusations unless they've got some pretty good evidence to prove their claim. That they wouldn't go this. You don't come out with a full blast like this and drop something like that as to be the most of the defense of your case if you don't have something to back it up. So they're desperately waiting for their opportunity to get Mr. Gates on the witness stand where they can grill him. And once the opening statement was made by Manafort's attorneys, that's when apparently the lawyer for Uncle Bob the Executioner decided, we may or may not bring Gates up because they understand that obviously Manafort's lawyers have done their homework. They've obviously got some evidence and they're dying to cross-examine Gates. And that could ruin and destroy the case. And it could also prove that if there's evidence that is unearthed by Manafort's attorneys and the judge finds out that this evidence was known to Uncle Bob, this would be exculpatory evidence, and that they hid that evidence, which we know that Andrew Weissman is an expert at this exact thing, hiding exculpatory evidence. Mueller has also been accused of it in the past as well. So Ellis already knows the tactics of Mueller and Andrew Weissman. He knows them quite well. He's very familiar with it. He's probably studied their case histories, and he's probably prepared for the type of shenanigans they're going to pull. But they're not going to pull it in Judge Ellis's courtroom. He made that perfectly clear today, as we can learn from the reporters from the Washington Examiner. But this appears to be how this case is going to play itself out. It's going to be a referendum on Mr. Gates. They are going to try to turn the tables. And at the same time, if they can prove that Weissman and Uncle Bob and his team had this exculpatory evidence that they hid from the court, that could place them in legal jeopardy. And Judge Ellis, you can tell, he's the type of guy who will hold Uncle Bob the Executioner and his team in contempt and maybe throw their asses in jail if they try to play these types of games. So it's a very risky game that's being played by Uncle Bob, but I mean, he's got to do something, right? So we'll continue to follow this case, but the early indications are that Manafort's got some really good attorneys, and apparently they feel pretty good about the case. Manafort pled not guilty. He didn't cut a deal. He pled not guilty. So obviously he must feel pretty good, and his attorneys must feel pretty good, or they never would have said, okay, let's go fight it, and you're going to lose and pay a heavy price. They obviously said, I think we can win this case. Plead not guilty. So we'll continue to watch the case. Very, very interesting. So let's move on to the next thing, and then there's another story on this, and we'll get to that here in just a moment. But the next story up is we now have, as I was talking about a couple weeks ago, at some point you get Democrats turning on themselves, and we're all seeing examples of this. Not just the corporate Democrats turning on the far left wing of the party and vice versa, but we're also seeing some of the really big players turn on each other. Of course, it was just a few months ago when Kirsten Gillibrand, who has presidential aspirations and who had always been a close friend of the Clintons, came out and made her statement about Bill Clinton's sexual allegations, and she took a lot of heat for that. And then, of course, she was the leading voice amongst Democrats and for Al Franken to step down. She was one of the Democrats who did not back Franken. So what happened, apparently, has been going on kind of behind the scenes, is this has made George Soros quite angry. Quite angry, because, of course, he's very close to the Clintons, good friends with Al Franken and a lot of other Democrats. And so George Soros apparently launched his little secret war against Gillibrand, and she has become aware of that. And apparently what he's doing is, of course, he owns so many of these leftist Democrats with his money that he's been I guess you would say, motivating a lot of these Democrats to try to turn the screws on Kirsten Gillibrand. And of course, Soros is having these other Democrats go out there and say, well, Kirsten Gillibrand is only doing this for her own personal political aspirations. That's why she threw Slick Willie under the bus. That's why she threw Franken under the bus, because she's only concerned about her own political situation, and she's willing to throw these other people under the bus, and we can't have that. We got to stick together. And so Soros is working behind the scenes now against Kirsten Gillibrand, who is, I guess, one of the higher contenders possibly for to run for president in 2020. And so apparently we have a pretty nasty little war going on inside within. Now, this is not your extreme left versus, your centrist, because Kirsten Gillibrand is generally considered kind of a centrist, although she has gone kind of nutty, taking on the position of abolishing ICE and things and such. But aside from that, she's always been pretty much associated as a centrist, like a Clinton. And so it appears that it's not just the Democrats, the corporates versus the extreme left. It appears now that we have people within the corporate Democratic Party fighting amongst each other. And of course, Soros, if you're a Democrat, Soros is a bad guy to get in a fight with, because he controls so many Democrats with his money. And so Kirsten Gillibrand picking a fight essentially with Soros, in this case, could turn out to be very damaging to her. We'll have to see how far Soros is willing to go to destroy Gillibrand, and we'll have to see who comes to her aid. I'm guessing not many people, because they like George Soros's money a lot more than they like her. Of course, we had Trump again today sending out his most forceful text ever to Jeff Sessions to end that Mueller probe. End it. And yes, I mean, I think, yesterday I said I officially have given up on Sessions. I've been trying to hold out some hope. I've been trying to give him some benefit of a doubt. But at this point, I'm out of gas, man. And yesterday I said, that's it. That's it. I can no longer believe that there's anything at all, any reason whatsoever to believe that Sessions is any way, shape, or form on our team. He's obviously on the other team. I can come to no other conclusion. And of course today, and Trump's been hitting Sessions for a long time, but today was his probably most ferocious tweet ever, really applying the pressure to Sessions. And it really gets me thinking that Trump really knows they need to win the midterms, and as he announced yesterday, he'll be campaigning 7 days a week until the midterms. And so they know they need to hold on. And what's sad is that you've got Republicans, establishment Republicans, who want to lose. They want to lose the House. They want Democrats to take over the House. That's how nasty this thing is, and how despicable they are. So, anyhow, yeah, I mean, I think that if Trump and Republicans, if the Republicans win, hold on to the House, pick up a few seats in the Senate, Trump's going to be a lot stronger after the midterm. And by November, Uncle Bob may not even be around anymore. I mean, he may be forced to end it. If not, it'll probably happen shortly after the midterms, one way or another. But I really believe that Trump, if the Republicans hold on to the House, Trump will be much stronger after the midterms. I think he knows that, and I think that that's when you're going to see him make his moves, whether it's declassifying documents, launching his own presidential commission, or firing Sessions and Rodenstein. Firing Sessions and Rodenstein. I would not be the least bit surprised. And he will have a lot more support to do it. And so, because he'll be rid of Ryan, and McConnell is not going to challenge him. So I think that that's the thing to watch for. Obviously, the most important thing is to win the House. At least I think so. And I think Trump believes that as well. So a more empowered Trump after the midterms, I believe he will tell Sessions. Just call him into his office and say, look, man, I'm done. Either you put a stop to the Mueller investigation and you start holding the criminals accountable and figure out what happened in the Spygate situation, or you're fired. You can either do your job or you can resign right now, or I can fire you. Take your pick. I kind of think that that's where this is going to go. So we'll just have to see after the midterms. There's no question today's tweet against Sessions was the most vicious yet. And, you know, Sessions knows this, but he just seems to be he just doesn't seem to care. I mean, he doesn't seem to care. Or else, I don't know. You know, I have no explanation for Sessions' behavior. I mean, none. Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson has called on Congress to read the entire unredacted FISA memo. This would be the recent release of the 4 FISA applications, the original and the 3 renewals. Tucker Carlson wants Congress to unredact it completely and then read it on the House floor. Yes, indeed. That's a great idea. Great idea from Tucker Carlson. Declassify that sucker, President Trump, and let Congress get it completely unredacted and let them read it on the House floor. Enter it into the congressional record, and it will be on C-SPAN. It will be everywhere. That's exactly what we should do. Great idea, Tucker Carlson. Thumbs up for Tucker Carlson. Good job. Well, Mr. Potato Head, John Brennan, is definitely feeling the pressure. He has called on Congress to warn Trump of the dire consequences if he ends the Mueller probe. You notice how Brennan is targeting Trump, and Congress said nothing about Sessions or Rodenstein. Congress really can't Congress itself cannot end the Mueller probe. They can call Uncle Bob and Rodenstein in front of the Congress and grill them on all their conflicts of interest and drive up popular public opinion to force them out or something, to bring more pressure, but they can't actually get rid of them. The person who can is Sessions or Rodenstein. But Brennan said nothing about Rodenstein or Sessions. He's calling on the Congress to warn the president of the dire consequences if he ends the Mueller probe. Dire consequences for you, Mr. Potato Head, and that's exactly what he's talking about. If the Mueller probe ends, then the other investigations continue. If the Republicans hold their House, and especially if Jim Jordan becomes Speaker, Mr. Potato Head and his friends are going to jail. That's why they're so unhinged. I mean, they're not unhinged for no reason. They're unhinged for a very good reason. They know exactly what the game is and how it will end for them if Trump is able to get a real attorney general, a real prosecutor, presidential commission, or anything else. If there's a real investigation that's allowed to take place, Brennan and his co-conspirators all know they're going to jail. Of course, more evidence of Trump derangement syndrome took place today when an unhinged leftist chased down a driver, rammed the car because they had a Trump bumper sticker. It nearly killed the driver, nearly killed the man because he had a Trump bumper sticker. I mean, I assume that unhinged leftist is going to be charged with attempted vehicular manslaughter, would be my guess. Possibly attempted murder. They were certainly attempting to cause injury. Crashed into him on purpose chased him down and crashed into him because they had a Trump bumper sticker. I mean, that's a felony, obviously. What felony it's going to be, I don't know. We'll just have to see. Okay, here's the other thing that came out today in the Manafort hearing. And this comes to us from the Gateway Pundit, which is, of course, an excerpt from the Washington Examiner article. Exactly, word for word. So the FBI special agent told the court, and this was regarding the pre-dawn raid, which was, he says, not a no-knock raid. The FBI agent who was in charge of that raid said it was not a no-knock raid. He says that they did knock 3 times, and then they opened the door with a key. I wonder where they got the key. Maybe some sort of skeleton key. I don't know. But most of the documents, it appears, that they seized had already been turned over by Manafort. Most of what they got had already been turned over by Manafort. And of course, if you remember correctly, they explained away the fact that they gave the rough treatment to Manafort and his wife because they say they're trained, that's a procedure to train to look for firearms. Of course, we know that Manafort and his wife were in bed. She was in her little nightie in bed. They got her out of bed. She's standing there in a little nightie. Yet they got to hand search her for weapons. How does a woman hide weapons under her nightie? They don't. I think you can figure out what was going on there. Well, of course, a lot of people are talking about the fact that Uncle Bob also has referred Podesta, then Weber, that would be Tony Podesta, then Weber, and Greg Craig to the Southern District of New York for investigation for failing to file as foreign agents. One of the several charges, I should say, that Manafort is looking at. No, they too didn't file as foreign agents, and I bet if you check a lot of these lobbyists in Washington, D.C., I bet you probably the majority of them do not file as foreign agents. Corrupt people for the most part. Now, this was one of two things or a combination of both. It was a political stunt, certainly, to give the impression that Uncle Bob's not running an unbiased investigation, when in fact we all know that Tony Podesta has already been given immunity. And everybody knows that the Southern District of New York is not going to do a damn thing to Podesta and Mr. Weber and Mr. Craig. They're not going to do a damn thing. They won't even investigate anything. It was just a political move, but it's also a legal tactic too for the jury. It's meant to have an effect on the jury in this case, to make it look like there's been some damning evidence that's been brought forward, and it's come from these 2 or 3 guys, and they could be facing serious problems as well. It's to try to make the jury think that this is a lot more going on than what's really going on. But the fact of the matter is, everyone knows it's a stunt, and that the Southern District of New York is not going to prosecute any of these individuals, or even investigate them for that matter. It's a political stunt, and it's just more of what we've been seeing from Uncle Bob. We also had another story today. I didn't even write this down, just one I read, that apparently the DOJ has leaked some stuff. Someone in the DOJ has leaked some stuff to BuzzFeed, and they published something today, which is showing that their case against this young Russian girl, this Maria Butina, is apparently also a big political stunt, and that there's no there. Just another political stunt, just to keep it all going. Just to keep it going is all it is. So, I would not look for anything to happen. Tony Podesta has already been given immunity. We know that. He likely certainly will not testify in the Manafort hearing here. It doesn't appear. But there's nothing going to happen to Tony Podesta or these other two guys. It was a political stunt and a legal tactic. And most people can figure that one out. It's not hard to see. Hopefully the jury can figure that one out. Are you from Wisconsin? If you are from Wisconsin, you have got a female Republican who's running against another Republican. And her name, I guess that's kind of a primary. Her name is Leah Vukmir. V-U-K-M-I-R. V-U-K-M-I-R. Remember that name because you do not want to vote for Leah Vukmir. Now, she's apparently running for, I guess, a state Senate seat in Wisconsin. She was caught in a photo when asked about Trump, in a conversation about Trump. She was seen holding her nose, describing her feelings about Trump. She's a wicked anti-Trumper who hangs around with a lot of anti-Trumpers, and she said that Trump is repulsive to everyone. This is a Republican running for the Wisconsin Senate. So, if you live in Wisconsin, you do not want to vote for Leah Vukmir. V-U-K-M-I-R. Remember that name. V-U-K-M-I-R. Do not vote for this woman. She is definitely not your friend. I can assure you that. She's on the other team. Rasmussen has Trump at 48% and going up. This is unbelievable. This is actually 4 points higher than where Obama was at the same time in his presidency. And that's with Obama getting nothing but total love and affection from the media. They never called him on anything, ever, never. Can you guys ever remember seeing CNN, MSNBC, or any of the rest ever running a negative story on Obama? I can't. I can't recall it ever. In his entire 8 years, I can't think of a single time I heard any of the left-wing media run a negative story on Barack Hussein Obama. Yet, he still is only 4 points. Trump is still 4 points more popular than Obama was at the same time. And Trump is being abused every single day, not just by the left-wing media, left-wing politicians, but even Republicans, as I just pointed out, along with the entire Hollywood and the entire establishment. It's amazing that he can have numbers this high after taking the beating he takes every day. It's extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. I've never seen anything like it. Never seen anything like it. I mean, they were pretty hard on Bush after the Iraq War on the left, and they drove his poll numbers down into the low 30s and called for his impeachment and his hanging and everything else. Camped out at his house, Code Pink, camped out at his house every day. They interrupted press conferences. A lot of the same stuff you see with Trump, but it's much worse with Trump. But Bush was not able to withstand it. It drove his numbers into the dirt. But Trump, apparently he's like Teflon. Apparently he's like Teflon because his base is so loyal to him. And he's picking up fans. He's picking up fans. Has to be. Has to be. He's gained, what, 8 or 9 points since right after he was inaugurated. He was like in the upper 30s, 37, 38. Now he's sitting at 48. How's that possible? It's extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. Never witnessed anything like it in my life. Barack Hussein Obama has put out his list of 81 candidates he believes the party should get behind to support. Guess whose name was not on it? Alexandria Cortez. Nope, she's not on Obama's list. She is not on Obama's list. That's pretty interesting, actually, because you would think he probably would support her. He's a Marxist. He's a Marxist. But there must be something about her that he doesn't like. I guess we'll learn more about that as we go down the road. But that's pretty interesting because this kind of puts Obama at odds with that left wing of his party. And of course we know he was no big fan of Bernie. He was a full participant in knowing about the games that were being played against Bernie Sanders. And of course we know he's no friend of Commie Bernie. Of course we have Twitch McConnell now backing down on the border wall funding. He was saying, yeah, we're not going to be able to get that border wall funding done. No, we're just not going to be able to do it. Trump said, okay, we'll shut down the government. How's that? And now McConnell's backing down and going, well, maybe we can do something on that border wall funding. Yeah, I guess we could find a few more billion for that. It's amazing to watch and see how quickly Twitch McConnell crumbles every single time that Trump challenges him. That's why I think that Trump likes having McConnell there, because he crumbles so easily. He crumbles so easily every time, man. Guy has no backbone whatsoever. Now, probably the most interesting story of the day is based on a conversation between Sean Hannity and Sarah Carter that took place today on the radio. I heard most of it. Some of you probably heard it as well. Now, Sarah Carter, we've talked a lot about these whistleblowers. We hear about all these whistleblowers. Why won't they come forward? And all this kind of stuff. Well, Sarah Carter is talking to Sean Hannity today, and she says, well, she's got sources. Has talked to some of these whistleblowers, and the reason they're so terrified is because apparently what is happening and what has been happening is that the whistleblowers that have come forward, the ones that have come forward, many of them who have come forward, their names have been given to the Justice Department by, believe it or not, Republicans. And I think Senator Burr and maybe little Marco may be two of the suspects here, because that's the Senate Intelligence Committee, and that's where a lot of these whistleblowers are going, to the Senate Intelligence Committee. But apparently some of them maybe even to the House Intelligence Committee. But this explains why all these dozens and dozens and dozens of whistleblowers who could blow the whistle on Brennan, blow the whistle on Comey, blow the whistle on McCabe, on Petersman Stokas, on the whole 9 yards, that the reason these guys are not coming forward is because many of the ones who did early on, they came forward thinking that they would be protected, but instead certain Republicans, and we can assume Democrats as well, but they're mainly pointing the finger at Republicans because that's who they think that they can trust. So these whistleblowers think, okay, well, we can trust the Republicans on this committee to come forward with this information. So they come forward with the information, and these Republicans turn around and give that information to the DOJ or to the FBI, who then turns and retaliates against them. So this is what is going on behind the scenes that no one's really wanting to talk about with these whistleblowers. But now it appears it's out. Sarah Carter said this, and no, actually it was not Sarah Carter. It was actually Cheryl Atkinson. Let me get that right. It was Cheryl Atkinson, not Sarah Carter. Cheryl Atkinson was the one who told Sean Hannity that she's got sources and she's talked to whistleblowers who are telling her that when these whistleblowers have come forward, that their names have been given immediately to the DOJ, to the FBI, and they've been retaliated against. So they don't know who to trust. They think they could trust going to this committee or that committee. They think they could trust this, especially Republicans, who appear to be the ones who want to get to the bottom of it. But apparently there's some Republicans who are pretending to want to get to the bottom of it. But what they're actually doing is sabotaging the whistleblowers, turning their names in to the DOJ and FBI so that they can be targeted, so that they can scare them and put the fear in them so that they won't come forward and testify. So we need to get to the bottom of who these people may be. I suspect it's certainly Senator Burr. That's a no-brainer. And I suspect maybe little Marco may be one of those people. I'm thinking about the House Intelligence Committee. I think those are all pretty good guys. I would be pretty shocked to find out that it's one of the Republicans. It could be like Issa or somebody like that, but for the most part, even he's been pretty good. So we really need to find out who these Republicans are who are turning in these whistleblowers. And they need to find another way to allow these whistleblowers to get their information forward. There's got to be a way to get that done. There really has to be a way to get that done. There is a way to get that done. There's a way to do it. For these whistleblowers to be able to get their information to the right people. They need to be careful about who they're going to, and they need to come up with a better way of doing it. But anyway, that to me was the most interesting or frightening story of the day that we finally find out, because we've been asking for months and months and months. We have all these whistleblowers that we hear about, but they're not coming forward. They're afraid. Why is that? What's going on? Well, now we know what's going on. Somebody is dropping the dime on them when they come forward. That's how bad it is. These people are scared. You got to remember, the deep state right now, they are kind of like a wounded animal that's been backed into a corner. It's a fight to the death. It's a fight to the death. And we're in it. We're in it. Yes, we are. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow. More TowerGate. See ya. Bye.